Did authorities stop the Siders family from creating a cult?
Find a young girl and get her pregnant. And let's build this family or commune against the outside world. Inbreeding and secrecy and paranoia that all contributed to what we're seeing right now.
And if so, who is the cult leader?
In this case, it seemed like the grandparents had a certain ideology and they took this 15-year-old girl and obviously they had influence over their son. And I think they are the driving force behind this very disturbed thinking and action.
That's a psychotherapist with a shocking evaluation. But first, do me a favor, hit the like, subscribe, and hype the episode. I'm Matt Johnson, and this is Justice. Joining the program here to talk about it, we have Dr. Robi Ludwig, nationally known psychotherapist, award-winning reporter, and author. I have all the details in my show notes. We'll talk about it at the end. First off, thank you for being here. And what's your initial thoughts about the Ohio case that has really gripped the headlines lately?
This is such an unfortunate case. And one of the things that I was thinking about is that it has a cult-like feel to it. And the mother of these children was so young when she started having kids. She was pregnant when she married her husband and then was absorbed into this system. And it's a very paranoid system where the outside world is bad and the inside world kind of creates their own rules because that's how they feel safer. And if you look at the psychology of cults and cult leaders, that is the theme. There's the paranoia about the outside world, and it's only people within a certain group who are considered safe. So that's one aspect. And it's even very possible that the children are considered bad in some way, or they feel paranoid about the children as well if they behave in a certain way. I'm not sure how closed the system is, if the paranoia extends to the kids or if it applies to the children as well.
When you look at the fact that we're dealing with 4 adults in the household and 16 living children with age range from 18 months to 18 years old, who is in control?
Well, it seems like the grandparents are in control, which is so odd to think. Whenever I think of grandparents, I think of them as this loving force that adds love to the family. And in this case, it seemed like the grandparents had a certain ideology and they took this 15-year-old girl and obviously they had influence over their son. And I think they are the driving force behind this very disturbed thinking and action.
Yeah, and I want to play a clip for you. This is going to be from someone that worked in that village at a Dollar Tree store that was nearby, just describing what little interaction she had with at least one of the children, and I think the mother.
I noticed that he would keep her really close to her, and she was not allowed to speak to nobody. I noticed that. And when she came in with the kids were all very thin, very, very thin, ghost white, didn't have no weight on their body, and they had their hair over their face, like to block out, the outside world to not see them.
Her recollection is that it sounds like the husband and wife would come into the store together, and she was very close to him during all the time that they were in the store together. And when she was there separately, maybe with the kids, they were almost told not to look at anybody. Their hair was down, just very sheltered. What did you pick up on?
Well, that they were hiding in plain sight, and also the level of dirt that they were in and just squalor that obviously the parents or grandparents didn't see, didn't feel, but the outside world certainly could observe. And there's a lot of denial that can go on in towns where we never really think that kids could be hidden or abused in quite this way. When, we live next door, we just think, why would that happen? So there's a level of denial, and the family was so slick in terms of making them invisible. They never went to doctors. They never attended any school. So again, kind of this cult-like feeling of they were totally disconnected from the outside world. And, probably in some ways didn't even realize how odd they presented because, they're in this bubble that they created for themselves.
Yeah, and according to the allegations, they were putting the children in a 12 by 12 foot room. There was human waste throughout. They were malnourished, the children were, flea and bug infestations. Some children reportedly unable to speak normally or even spell their name. Two had to be airlifted to a hospital on the verge of death, according to first responders. So that's the conditions that they were living in. But you have the Siders, the mom's attorney, saying this, that he doesn't believe that she is evil. And he's still trying to figure out whether or not she's a victim.
At this point in time, we are still not sure, at least at my office, whether my client is a victim herself or not. I have previously stated that she does not necessarily characterize herself as a victim, but the investigation from the prosecutor's office, the investigation from my office is still ongoing.
So according to this defense attorney, he's saying to local media that in his impression of the mother, when he's first meeting her, he doesn't believe that she considers herself a victim. And he also says, I don't think that she's an evil person. And then she goes on to ask about the children and how they're doing, where they are.
So Elizabeth has been getting care packages in jail. What does she do today? She brings out a letter and she said, is there any way for me to get some of these care package items to my kids? Because she's thinking about her kids in jail.
What sticks out to you about that?
It is very odd that this mother, who basically treated her kids worse than an animal in American homes, would worry about her kids. But listen, that could speak to her paranoia. The outside world is more dangerous than when they're under her care. But I think it's important to remember this woman was 15 years old when she got absorbed into the family. So her sense of what is morally right, maybe suspect, maybe due to survival reasons, she had to, much like a cult, absorb what she was being told. She had no access to friends, no access to her own family. So I do think that there is something to look into here. We hear mom, and we want moms to be universally good and know how to act. But when you have somebody who was 15 years old and absorbed into this sick system, what choices did she have? It sounds like she was a victim, possibly without knowing it. And those things can happen.
Yeah, and it sounds like she was a child bride. They crossed state lines to get the couple married, the kids married. And then she was pregnant at the time and had a lot of kids shortly after. But when we're talking about, as they're making a determination of whether or not the mother is victimized, I noticed this when she was in court. Did you see that on her arm? There's this mark on her arm, and I'm not quite sure what it is, if it's the lighting. Obviously, I'm not there, but it made me think that maybe there's some sort of restraints in the home, and she's dealing with something like that herself. I think that it might make sense to a lot of people if they learned that she was also being abused.
Yeah. And she might have also been targeted, which happens with children who are abused, right? One can imagine the grandparents telling their son, find a young girl and get her pregnant, and let's build this family or commune against the outside world. I mean, it sounds like in some ways her husband was also being directed and part of the plan that the parents set in place. So these are all things that would be really fascinating to learn. And also what her background is. Was she leaving an abusive family and then found another abusive family and just didn't have the ability to discern at 15 years old a dangerous situation for herself. But she could very well have been a target and then is just a survivor right now who has no idea what's right or wrong. It's possible.
So how do authorities approach her then as they're putting together their investigation?
Well, I think that they should interact with her in a non-threatening way and just really try, without blaming her, to just understand her story. Because she may see these police officers as bad and having harmful intent towards her anyway, but to somehow develop a trust level, allowing her to understand that they are there to really help her and understand her story, and they want to hear all of the details so that they can put the pieces back together, or maybe even contact her family member to find out what their experience of her situation is.
Yeah, and the other adults, again, are Gary Siders Jr., the father of these children, and Gary Siders Sr. You know, they were in court also. Everyone has pleaded not guilty.
How do you plead? Yes, I will enter a not guilty plea for you at this time then, and you can confer with counsel.
But the reason why authorities, according to the initial reporting, is there was some sort of investigation with Gary Siders Jr. And there were allegations of indecent exposure, and he was being investigated for that. And that's what apparently led authorities to the Siders home and the discovery of all of the children in those conditions.
Again, I'm talking about the part of the investigation that got us to the search warrant, and that was an ongoing cooperative investigation that had gone on. Again, something unrelated. It wasn't about the welfare of these 16 kids. At that point, we didn't know that there was going to be 16 kids there. We weren't. Again, at this, when they talk to people, people were like, "No, I haven't seen any kids. I haven't seen any kids there." So some of that is out there with respect to the parallel investigation that was going on. I don't know. It was a joint effort between Benton County and BCI. Maybe a month, 6 weeks but that was not related to the conditions of the house or the welfare. Literally, they were coming to the culmination of that other investigation, which led them to do a search warrant at that house.
What does that tell you, if anything, if that turns out to be true?
Well, I wonder if these kids are also being sexually abused. You know, these people could be psychotic and delusional. We are assuming they are sane with conscious mind and knowing what they're doing. We really don't know. Sometimes people like this who have no sense of what mental health is or even physical health sometimes are not in their right mind. So it really is important to find out if there's a diagnosis there as well. But when I was talking about the mother's family, these are her in-laws. I was thinking about her birth family, where she came from. Does she have anybody, a part of her, original family who maybe could help us understand a little bit more about this picture and how she ended up in this place?
That brings me to the other question about just a community as a whole. I want to go back to another interview clip with the dollar store manager or the dollar store clerk, who's basically saying, I wish I would have done something sooner. And I feel like there's a lot of people in that community that are probably questioning themselves now in their reluctancy to act. So let me play this for you and we'll talk about it.
Just sorry to the children, and I'm sorry that I should have said something sooner, and I'm praying, and I know they're in better conditions now, and hopefully they get what they deserve.
So you have this clerk saying, she's just sorry for the children, and there's probably a lot of people in that community that feel like they let them down, and they did.
Well, the people that let the kids down were their parents and grandparents. And in the outside world, it's hard to know when you step in, right? They're not trained professionals. If these children had gone to a school then the teachers would be trained professionals to say something is wrong here, and I have a responsibility to report it. And same with any physician. But when it comes to a clerk who's working at the dollar store, of course, when you find out more information after the fact, there's going to be a sense of guilt. What could I have done? Which makes total sense. But when you're in that actual situation, it's hard to make sense of these things, especially when there's like a natural denial that we tend to think of parents and grandparents as loving their children, not delusional and crazy and chaotic and putting them, in a room where they have less rights than an American dog has in most families.
Most of our livestock was kept in better conditions than the children.
Some of these children couldn't even speak. Yeah. So, I mean, we're talking, this is very, it was terrible. I mean, it looked like almost feral animals. It was terrible.
So what mask are the parents wearing in the outside world? We're going to talk about the fact that we've seen other cases similar to this, such as, like the Turpins. This is a case that I covered out of California. And, you had the parents, or at least the father, that was employed. He was going to work every day. So they're wearing a different mask in public, and I guess that's how they go undetected.
Yeah. But I think also moving around a lot. This family moved around a lot. They didn't have friends. They didn't talk to their neighbors. They were virtually invisible. And probably when people got too curious, their way of surviving was to move. But they probably scare the kids and say, don't talk to anyone. They might have induced this sense of fear also about others in the outside world, that they were dangerous. So we don't know what these kids actually think. It sounds like, again, they were hiding in plain sight because there was no attempt to make these children look normal, if you will. And these kids have no idea what normal is because there's no reference point. They're not looking to other people or other kids saying, this is how I should look. This is how I should smell. This is how I should be. So, they're really living in a state of ignorance and naivete that also continues to put them in harm's way. They're not screaming. They're not yelling. They're not saying, save me, save me. They don't know any better. So a person in the outside world, if they're not seeing any resistance and they're just seeing weird people that maybe don't smell right, you probably wouldn't jump to, oh my God, they're being abused if you're not a trained professional.
But why does this even happen in our society today? I know in the past that I've seen you talk about the Kimberly Sullivan case. I've covered the Turpin case. I'm sure you have as well. Why do we see cases like this where children are hidden? And in this case, 16 children.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine hiding any child when you think about it. But there are unwell people out there. There are unwell people who never get treated. We have a society that shames certain people in certain group about needing help. And we also, additionally, we don't notice very much in this world. Our heads are on our phones. Our worlds have become smaller. People don't interact with each other. They barely say hello and thank you. Yeah. So, there is this added layer of self-involvement culturally. So it is probably easier to get by and hide under the radar. But there are a lot of ill people that have a lot of strange and bizarre ideas that never get treated. And their illness, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. That could be happening. And these people, when they're paranoid, sometimes people who are paranoid or paranoid schizophrenic, they're super bright. They're real smart in terms of how to avoid certain people and how to get by. So when people are in this kind of ill delusional state, they may be very smart at hiding. And let's face it, it can be done today because we don't really notice very much anyway.
What are you going to be watching for now in this case?
I think we should learn a little bit more about the mother. I'd be very curious if she was a targeted victim. I almost think of the Jeffrey Epstein case, right? Where these girls were seduced into a sick system and couldn't get out of it. But they knew on some level they were being abused and there was no way out. It sounds like this girl might have been targeted because she wouldn't know. And then they kind of brainwashed her into this idea that this is the way the world should be and this is the way the world should look. So I really would want to find out more about that and find out who actually is the primary perpetrator here. Is it the grandfather? Is it the grandmother? And learn more about the dynamics within the family so we can make better sense of the crime.
Yeah, do you think that this was probably a learned behavior from maybe several generations? Or do you think that it's just like one person that put over influence over others? Because, you know, these are now co-conspirators according to the law.
Yeah. You know, it's hard to know. It's certainly possible. Certainly, there probably was a long history of mental illness that got normalized along the way, or maybe one particular sick person who was very strong-minded and they figured out how to create this whole system that worked for them. But clearly, there was something wrong, and a brainwashing technique and inbreeding and secrecy and paranoia that all contributed to what we're seeing right now.
Well, I know that you join me in, those prayers for those children and hope that they get
Yes.
the care that they desperately deserve and need.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for your time. How can we get a hold of you?
Oh, thank you. Well, people can follow me on Instagram and see what I'm doing. And it's at Dr. Robi Ludwig, DrRobiLudwig. Find me there and you could Google me and just see what I'm up to.
Well, you're fantastic. Everyone follow her. I'm going to have all the links in my show notes below as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. You're great.
And of course, our thoughts are with the children. If you or anyone you know has any information in the case, please call the number 855-BCI-OHIO. You can remain anonymous. And also check out the video section of this YouTube channel. I do a deep dive in the case with another doctor, a psychiatrist, and also a crime scene investigator where we go through how the crime scene was processed, what might be collected, and how that might lead to other charges. And while you're there, please hit the like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll keep you updated on this case and others. In the meantime, take care of yourself. I'll see you next time.